All right, we're calling the meeting to order. It is 5:30, December 16th, 2024. And the first matter on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance, and we'll ask our student members to lead us in that.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The next matter is the roll call.
Kristen Cambenzi, Glenn Sarka,
Here.
James Hewitt,
Here.
Jennifer Cliff,
Here.
Jennifer Ray,
Here.
Cheryl Maddox Smith,
Here.
Jason Zajunik,
Here.
Thank you, and I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
Make a motion to approve the agenda.
Thank you. Jason Zajunik
Second.
made the motion, and a second from Jennifer Cliff. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
The agenda is approved. Next issue on the agenda is superintendent's report.
Thank you, Mr. Sarka. Two parts to the superintendent report. We'll do part one, and then we'll have a little recess and do part two shortly thereafter. Here to talk a little bit about Mr. Hewitt. Jim Hewitt has been a dedicated member of the Marquette Area Public Schools Board of Education since 2015. Born and raised in the Marquette area, Jim has a deep connection to the local community, and his lifelong commitment to Marquette's growth and success has shaped his perspective as a board member. He has been actively involved in various aspects of the community, advocating for educational improvements and promoting programs that benefit students and families. Jim's professional background includes extensive experience in the banking industry since 2008, where he has developed a strong skill set in leadership, finance, and strategic planning. This experience serves him well in his role on the MAPS board, where he works collaboratively with other members to ensure sound fiscal decisions, promote effective policy, and maintain a high standard of education. As a board member, Jim has helped steer MAPS efforts to improve our facilities, enhance our curriculum, ensure the district remains fiscally sound. He's helped build a program at MAPS which truly addresses the myriad needs of our students, those academic and in many cases much more, a mission of paramount importance, especially since the COVID-19 pandemic. Mr. Hewitt believes that every student deserves access to a high-quality education and that the MAPS community plays an essential role in helping them achieve their fullest potential. In his free time, Jim enjoys spending time with family, watching his kids' sporting events, cooking, and exercising. He also helps coach and manage his son's soccer team. Jim has strong family ties to education. His parents are both retired teachers from the district. His father taught math and English at Gray-Verrett Middle School for the majority of his career, and in his final years became assistant principal of Gray-Verrett and then moved to Bothwell when the two middle schools consolidated, where he later retired. Jim's mother taught math, initially at Bothwell Middle School for a few years before moving to MSHS, where she retired. After retiring from MAPS, she worked at NMU for many more years as part of the adjunct faculty in the math department. His grandparents both worked for Manistee High School. His grandfather was the drafting and shop teacher, and his grandmother was an art teacher. Jim's wife, Melissa, has been a MAPS employee since 2007 and is currently an instructional coach at Bothwell Middle School. Jim and Melissa's 3 children attend MAPS at the elementary, middle, and high school levels. Melissa's father is a retired PE health teacher and was a longtime wrestling coach at Iron Mountain Public Schools, and her mother retired from the Iron Mountain Kingsford Community Schools preschool program. Both Jim and Melissa have a large number of additional aunts and uncles who are retired educators. This is something they are very proud of, as a good education plays a significant role in the development of children, and that ultimately shapes communities. On a personal note, it's hard to summarize my appreciation for Jim's role on the board. His calm demeanor and strategic approach to board business is something I've leaned on heavily throughout my tenure as superintendent. Through the celebrations and some challenges, Jim has remained a voice of reason. He is intelligent, well-informed, reflective, and honest. Most of all, Jim is wise. So in closing, I say thank you, Jim Hewitt, for your incredible talents which you've invested into our community's children, and for your leadership through the last 10 years of service to the Marquette Area Public Schools Board of Education and our district. You will be greatly missed.
And then you can do your speech. Sure. So on behalf of the board, MAPS board, the administration, the staff, and I'm sure a lot of parents and students in Marquette Area Public Schools, we'd like to present you with this plaque in appreciation for your 10 years of service. In a job that's often referred to as thankless, I'd like to thank you for all of those 10 years and officially give you back at least one Monday a month, several Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays, Fridays, and hopefully give sporting events back to you when you're not taking questions from the public. So it's been a personal pleasure working with you, and I know other board members would say the same. And I'm just say you've been a great asset for the administration as well. So thank you. Thank you.
Well, thank you. That's very nice, very kind words. I made a couple of notes of things that I just wanted to mention. I'm not going to make this long, but I didn't want to forget anything. So first, special big thanks to my wife, Melissa. As it's already been stated, many Monday evenings that she has had to bring kids to and from sporting events, dinners missed, things along those lines. And thankfully, I don't believe I've ever missed a Monday night game. Our kids never had games on Mondays. It's always been practices, so it's always worked out in my favor. But again, I don't want that to go without being mentioned. And more importantly, on that side, again, the dynamic of being on the board while your spouse is a member of one of the of the teachers union is not an easy thing to navigate. Not going to go into any details, but just know that she deserves a ton of praise for enduring these past 10 years with a lot of patience and grace. So the additional thanks I want to certainly extend also goes out to the board and previous superintendent Bill Saunders. He served MAPS well in my first few years and should be praised for his service. Thank you, of course, now to Zach in the past years where he picked up the torch and has carried our district onto the path of continued success. MAPS has been very lucky to have had Bill and continue to have Zach going forward. Similarly, thanks to former Superintendent Deb Berry and current Jim Lampman, both Bill and Zach, I think would certainly want to make sure that those two people were recognized for their service. And certainly cannot go without also thanking Linda Hopper. Without her, our top administrators would not perform at the level they do, so thank you, Linda. A few things I'm proud of, for the district as a whole over the last 10 years, just to highlight. The first one that came along with my tenure on the board was the one-to-one initiative. That was certainly a huge thing to undertake and continue. It's a big commitment financially, but it obviously, I think, pays off for all of our students and their success. On top of that, the passing of the bond in the sinking fund, the work with the community to really sell the importance of those fiscal agents to be able to basically sustain our district and keep the door, not only keep the doors open, but keep it thriving. So on that same kind of financial side of things, the continued, this is kind of a broad one, but the continued facilities improvements that we have made while still being able to settle contract increases regularly, and increasing staffing at the same time, not cutting, the balance of all that. It's a fine and delicate balance to navigate. So that is something I'm very proud of. Most recently, which seems maybe small, but I think has actually been a very huge thing for more the community side and the students themselves, but allowing the free entry to all sports for students and faculty, and reducing the overall pay-to-pay fees, I think has been something that was long overdue, and hope we can maybe even continue more improvements in those areas. Personally, when I was trying to think of like one thing I was proud, it's kind of hard to, you're part of a board, you're not here as an individual, so, but I am proud of the fact of my attendance record at meetings over the last 10 years. I think it's either 5 or 6 over 10 years that I missed, which if you don't pay a lot of attention, that doesn't sound phenomenal, but I think it's been on the higher end of attendance rates, so I'll take that with me. And my last sales pitch just goes out to the community as a whole, in that you'll see tonight in the budget hearing, we've had and continue to have a very strong fund balance over these last 10 years, and a lot of that goes to what I already mentioned, the bond and the sinking fund, but it goes to the state of Michigan and the governor's office and the state house and legislature. They've been very friendly to education, and historically, if you pay any attention, we know that goes in, the pendulum swings in different directions, and it's bound to come back sooner than later. And we, as a district, just like anybody else, cannot survive solely on the per pupil fund allowance. So I guess I'm just reaching out, if anybody's listening in the community, to when that time comes, please be prepared to help support MAPS. And because again, if you're a supporter of education, the only way to get by is to have great teachers, great facilities, great curriculum. It's all, you can't neglect any one of those things. Like I said earlier, it's all about the balance. So I think that's all. Appreciate it. And I'm sure you won't see the last of me yet. So we'll see ya.
And we'll take a 15-minute recess. There are cookies, I understand, and drinks as a reception for Jim. Thank you.
Just a bit. Thank you. I'll find out. I won't forget. I won't forget. I will. Yeah, exactly.
Not fair. I'll just flat the program. Yeah.
How have you been? I like the time.
A pleasure.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't get this.
Never expect. You know, like in the end. No, that's important.
Oh no, he's coming.
How's it going? Good. Like your tie is very festive.
Yeah.
It's presents.
You get
Once a year I wear something.
Here you go. Do you get a time off over the holidays?
I think I'm gonna take Thursday and Friday off. I'll get Tuesday and Wednesday off, and then Thursday, Friday together. For what?
Just I'm thinking about the dates. Wednesdays.
Today.
I don't even know. I'm just hanging on.
After Friday, I officially,
You guys have like 14 days, I think.
Yeah. An experience. And the last year was very short. Last year because the short was they did.
how does that work? Does it depend on when the dates are?
Yeah.
Okay.
It is, exactly.
And then I don't think dates have ever like to not get that weekend thing.
Yeah.
They'll pick up.
Yeah, I feel like usually we're there Monday, Tuesday or something.
Yeah, usually we've had Monday, Tuesdays before, but never just like all Monday. That's week. It's torturous. So
No, it works really nice to get a full weekend.
It's really different.
Yeah, very nice.
Like if I had
Good for you guys.
We're still.
Well, I don't keep
I
it.
didn't realize that you guys didn't get.
Yeah,
No.
is it all central staff?
Yeah, we get Christmas Eve, Christmas. You can take.
Yeah. Days around there.
Yeah.
That's all. It's all.
It's all picked.
Yeah, there we go.
I don't have to worry about roads.
Snow days?
For sure, oh my gosh, I know, I think of you every time they call one.
Yeah.
And this year, they've been really
I
calling
know,
some weird,
I know.
some real doozies for you.
Yeah, yeah, so you do that, and then you have to work all day, because you don't cancel. At least when you cancel school, you can lay low.
This Wednesday, all the kids were gonna check snow day.
It didn't even snow, it was not even, it wasn't even a dust.
These aren't too like.
Yeah, all these gotta work on it.
There were like 2 in a row and they.
Next on the agenda is the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Mr. Sarka. Gonna pass it along to Mr. Lampman for our December budget amendment.
Good evening. I've been asked by Mrs. Clip to make this as long as possible this evening.
That is not at all what I said.
Oh, sorry, I
Not even a little.
misheard you. So in your packet, you have, should have a document, PowerPoint presentation that's being cast behind you. So I'm here tonight to present the 24-25 budget amendment number 1. And let me just say that the budget is an estimate and it's an ever-evolving document throughout the course of the year. And to highlight that point, it's my understanding that we've had some major changes coming down the line for Public Act 152 regarding healthcare costs. I believe the State House passed a bill and the Senate passed a bill, and they're in reconciliation at this point. That's going to have an impact on the budget, but that will have to be brought to a future amendment that's not factored in here today. So I just want to highlight that fact that we're always looking at this and reviewing it. So later this evening, we're going to have a presentation from Michael Grantz, partner at Anderson Tackman. He'll be here presenting the 23-24 audited financial statements. And I think I'm going to veer off topic a little bit, not that I want to draw this out, but on page 63 of the audit report, there's a budget to actual statement with the general fund. And when we budget, we try to be a little conservative on our outlook to budgeting. We try to be a little conservative on the revenue side, maybe a little conservative on the expenditure side. And so looking at our budget to actual for 23-24, our revenues came in $272,000 higher than our estimated final budget. That's about 0.5%. So we were within 0.5% on the revenue side of where we thought we were going to be coming into year end last year. On the expense side, we came in about $510,000 lower on the expense side than we'd projected. So that's about 1% less than we thought we'd come in. So that's kind of where we want to be when we're budgeting. And I just thought I'd point that out before I get into all the nuts and bolts of this budget amendment. So you've heard me say this before, the general fund is comprised of several different funds. We have general operations, grants, Kauffman, Planetarium, Father Marquette, and athletics, various other funds. So it's kind of a mashup of different parts of the operation. So looking at the general fund, local revenues and interdistrict revenues, currently we're yielding about 4.67 on our investment portfolio. We thought when we were putting the original budget together this year that we'd see some more significant rate decreases come through the Federal Reserve. That didn't happen. Again, we were trying to be a little on the conservative side. We thought they were going to cut rates faster. I think they're meeting next week to talk about rate cuts. We'll see what happens. But at this point in December, we think we can increase our estimate by about $148,000. Property taxes, again, when we're projecting out, we're just using estimates. We're amending our property tax revenue based off the most recent data that we have, the taxable values from August 8th, 2024. So we're looking at, sorry, let me flip my page because I can't read that from this distance. 577,000 increase into our property taxes based off taxable value changes. And then our inter-district revenue for Marisa, we're looking at about a $211,000 increase from Marisa for our special ed reimbursements. And again, we just, we're basing this off the most recent data that we have available, updating our projections from last May and June. Moving on to state aid, this is where it gets really interesting. I'm sure you're going to find this fascinating. So, one of the big changes that we have in our projections from the original budget is our per pupil foundation. The data that we had at the time that we put the original budget together, we were looking at an increase to our per pupil foundation. I believe it was $241 is the estimate that we'd used in the budget. So we thought we'd come in at a per pupil foundation. Whoop, per pupil foundation of $9,849, and then surprise, surprise, we did not get a foundation allowance increase. So our per pupil foundation remains at $9,608 as it was last year. So that was about $771,000 in per pupil foundation allowance that we did not receive for this fiscal year. Now, the state being the state said, in lieu of a per pupil increase, we're going to do a one-time cost offset through the MIPSR's retirement system. And they did. They gave us $1.181 million, which would equate to a $369 per pupil increase. Remember, we budgeted for a $241 per pupil increase. But then the state being the state, and I'm not knocking the state, they've been very generous to the school district and all school districts in the state the last few years, but sometimes they giveth with one hand and taketh with the other. And they reduced our normal MIPSR's cost offset by about $627,000 when they gave us our one-time UAL dollars. So really, net, that equates to about $173 per pupil increase, so a little less than the $241 foundation pupil increase that we thought we were going to get initially when we formulated this budget. Another thing that happened was recently the state lowered, beginning in October, the unfunded liability stabilization rate. So that rate was 16.89%, and the state has dropped that to 10.58%. And really, that percentage represents the amount that the state is paying into the pension system on behalf of the districts for unfunded liabilities for current and future retirees. And really, for us, what that represents is an in and an out. We record the revenue that the state gives us, and then we record the corresponding expense. So the net is zero on our books. But it does have an impact on our budget. So when the UAL got reduced by about 6%, well, that shows up as a reduction in our revenue and a corresponding reduction in our expenses. So that 6% reduction does have a pretty big impact overall. Another thing that happened was with MIPSers, speaking of the unfunded liability, the state recorded a $494,000 payment to the pension fund on behalf of Marquette Public Schools to go towards the unfunded pension liability. They've done this previously, so this was another one-time deposit this year. But again, we have to reflect that as an in and an out, so it increases our revenue, increases our expenses by $494,000. Net effect is zero on the books. As I mentioned previously, we had an increase in property taxes based off the updated taxable values. When our property taxes go up, our other 22 prop funding goes down. So it kind of balances out, so no district gets to benefit too much out of a large increase in property tax revenue. And then interestingly, we had some additional funding that showed up this year for transportation costs. We received another $275,000 in transportation costs. We received this in the prior year as well. We thought it was going to be just one-time funding, but the state granted it to us again, so we were happy to have that. So looking at this, and I promise I will speed up, Mrs. Clip. I'm going slow now, I will speed up. So looking at the general fund revenue, looking at the general fund revenue, I'm not sure when our auditor is going to be here. He'd said about 6:30, so I'm trying to get us to the point that the auditor will be here as well. So, sorry. So, looking at our general fund revenue overall, we're looking at an overall budgetary increase to our local revenue, reduction to our state revenue, slight decrease to our federal revenue based largely on timing issues between last year and this year. So overall, we're looking at a reduction of revenue of $817, which is about a 0.83% decline to our revenue. So less than 1% decline to our revenue overall from where we were on our original budget. So looking at this graphically, you can see the largest share of our revenue comes from the state. Currently, that's about 65%. We receive 33% of our revenue from local sources, largely property taxes. We receive 1.5% of our funding from the federal government, and then 0.5% from other. So that just shows you the original budget to the proposed amendment graphically. Moving on to general fund expenditures. As you're well aware, we settled contracts this year with all of our bargaining units. That had an impact on where we thought our original budget was going to be. Back when we put this together in May and June, we weren't in the really deep into negotiations. We weren't sure exactly where we were going to be. So this amends for that. So we're looking at an increase of salaries of about 3.9% based off the civil bargaining units. We're looking at a decrease in benefits of about 4%. Largely that's due to the changes to MIPSers that I discussed. And then operations and maintenance, overall, we're looking at about a 5.6% increase based off of various supplies and purchase service changes that have happened or are going to happen this year. So looking at the breakdown, again, overall, we're looking at going from $47,731,000 of expenses in the original budget to $48,176,000 in the proposed budget. That's an increase of $445,000, or about 0.93%. So again, less than a percent change on the expense side. And looking at that graphically, you can see salaries and benefits is the largest expense to the district. We're looking at about 80.5% on salaries and benefits as part of the budget. 8.8% is purchase services, 5.2% is supplies, so on and so forth. But really it's salaries and benefits that are the lion's share of our general fund budget. So looking at this overall, we started out this school year with a fund balance totaling $18,305,000. In this amendment, we have $47,691,000 in revenues, $48,176 in expenses, resulting in a net loss of $485,556. That would give us an ending fund balance of $17,817,000 and an unassigned fund balance of $10,455,000. So we're still over $10 million in our unassigned. Our original budget had our unassigned fund balance, and our unassigned is what we have available for use. Our original budget, we were at $10.7 million, so this just spends down that unassigned fund balance by about $300,000. And here's that picture I promised you. Sorry, I'm having some fun with Mrs. Clip tonight. Moving on to the food service fund. So the food service fund, overall, we're looking at an increase in revenue of $265,398 from the original budget. That is largely due to changes in state revenue. Right now, we have a universal meals program, and we're seeing a higher utilization in meals coupled with an increase in our reimbursement rate. So I think in our original budget, we were being a little bit conservative in the revenue that we were going to take in. We took a look at it. We feel comfortable right now that we're probably going to be closer to the $996,000 mark in state revenue. Looking at the expenditures. So in the expenditures, we're looking at an overall increase of $168,881 to the food service fund over where we thought our original budget was. Again, the large change was the increase in salaries on the settled contracts. So looking at overall, we began the year with a fund balance of $746,000 in the food service fund. We have revenues in this budget amendment totaling $2,044,000, expenses of $1,998,000, resulting in net income of $46,215 and an ending fund balance of $792,000. Now we continue to have a challenge that a lot of other districts are facing right now, and that is an excess fund balance in the food service fund. And we are continuing to find ways to spend this down. Ideally, we want to be around the $450,000 mark in fund balance. But it's been a challenge trying to bring that fund balance down. So you will see at future meetings requests for new investments into the food service program. Looking at some of the other funds, Fund 32 is our debt retirement fund, 41 is our capital projects fund, 42 is our sinking fund, which, as Mr. Hewitt pointed out, our sinking fund was renewed, so we're into our 2024 sinking fund. So we're tapping into the new millage. So looking at the debt service fund, this one is pretty straightforward. We have a millage to collect revenue to pay the annual bond payment on the 2016 bond. So this is just to amend the revenues based off taxable values. We actually decreased the millage rate from the 23-24 year to the 24-25 year. Last year it was 0.42 mils. We brought that down to 0.38 mils, which should be enough still to cover the bond payment. So really it's just in and out. We collect the revenue, we pay out for the bond payment. So looking at this overall, we started the year with a fund balance in the debt service fund of $186,000. We're projecting tax revenues of $588,215, expenditures of $657,000, resulting in a net loss in the debt service fund of about $69,000, but an ending fund balance of $116,938. By the way, feel free to stop me at any point along the way if you have questions. So moving on to, did I go the wrong way? Let's see. No, capital projects, I'm sorry. So moving on to capital projects fund. So the big change with capital projects from our original budget amendment is the purchase of the planetarium projector that the board had approved earlier this year. We spent about $775,000 on a new projector. That projector is being paid for through a combination of grants and a fundraising campaign. So we'll see those dollars flow back into the capital projects fund. So this amendment basically updates for that change. So we started the year with a fund balance in capital projects of $5.7 million. This amendment has revenues totaling $2,156,000, expenditures of $1,045,000, resulting in net income of $1,110,000, or an ending fund balance of $6.8 million. And this is probably the point that I'll get on my soapbox a little bit, and I'll just reiterate the point that based off a recent study, we do have over $100 million of identified infrastructure needs within the district. And while we're very grateful for the community approving a sinking fund millage, the sinking fund brings in about $1.3 million a year. And that level of revenue just is not sufficient to maintain the 700,000 square feet of facilities that we have. And so we've been trying to set some money aside in our capital projects fund to address some of the emergency situations that may come up that the sinking fund isn't just able to cover. So I'll climb off my soapbox now, thank you. Moving on to the sinking fund. So we had various projects paid for out of the sinking fund this year, and really most of them are projects that began last year that carried over into the 24-25 school year, such as the science lab project, the CTE roof at the high school, some work on the MSHS boiler, and the HVAC system at Bothwell. All those projects were started in earlier years and wrapping up in 24-25. So again, Revenue changes in the sinking fund largely due to changes in the tax revenue, taxable values. So we're adding 90,000 to revenue in the sinking fund. Expenditures in the sinking fund, we're increasing our estimate by 220,000 to 1.7 million in expenditures this year out of the sinking fund. And again, part of that is just trying to time these projects because they're moving from one fiscal year to the next. You estimate how much is going to be in 1 year, how much of the expenses are going to carry over, and we're not always exactly right on those estimates. And the contractors are always optimistic, and you know, we run with their estimates, and so this is just updating for those projects that have occurred. So we started the year with a sinking fund balance of $930,727. We're projecting revenues of 1.3 million and expenses out of the sinking fund this year of 1,755,000, resulting in a net loss or a spend down of the sinking fund of $434,803, resulting in projected ending fund balance as of June 30 of $495,924. And then the private purpose trust fund. This amendment is basically just bringing our estimate in line with where the 23-24 actual was. We're predicting a similar year to 23-24, so we're just amending accordingly. So private purpose trust budget, started the year with 307,286 in fund balance. We're looking at revenues of $118,500, expenditures of $116,500, resulting in net income of $2,000 and a projected ending fund balance of $309,286. And if anyone has any questions, there's my contact information. Or I will entertain questions this evening as well. And hearing none. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Landman, for that thorough presentation. Moving on with the superintendent report. Item B under the superintendent report for the MAPS to consider hourly and daily service rates. If you look at in your packet, there's a memo from our HR director, Regina Rollstone, who was unable to make it this evening, describing the proposed increase in rates. This is for our non-union, non-contractual employees who do not receive benefits. And the proposed increase of $3 an hour is the same as what we provided our substitutes, which seemed appropriate. Any questions on the proposed hourly and daily service rate increases? Moving on.
Oh, sorry, Mr. Sedgwick, just popped into my head, but did the budget amendment adoption for tonight, does that take into account these increases?
Mr. Lanton, you want the mic?
This does not. We did not factor it. That's one of the items that came up late as we were putting together the budget amendment that we did not factor in this evening. So this would be included in a future amendment.
Sure. Okay.
Next up, another proposal from our HR director, this time for our sub rates. When posing sub-rate increases earlier in the fall, there was an exclusion of one, I guess I'll call it classification within MESPA 1. And this proposal, which you see in your packet, identifies that one classification. It's for retired kitchen workers. With our MESPA 1 group, we oftentimes hire our retirees as subs, and they come with special skills and experience which allows them to fill those unique roles, and we have rates that are, you know, aligned with that need. So we did have that one classification that was left off, and she is proposing that we increase them by the same amount that we did everybody else. Any questions on that? Moving right along, Mr. Wheeler, if you'd be so kind as to step to the podium in the event that we have questions about new course offerings for MSHS. This proposal would be effective for the 25-26 school year, but due to the nature of sequence of events to get to the fall, our course listings have to be updated now so that they can be available to students who are signing up for next school year. So, Mr. Wheeler, did you want to say anything about this proposal?
Certainly. Members of the board, Mr. Sedgwick, Mr. Linda. Thanks for taking a look at these courses for us here this evening. Mr. Sedgwick is right. I mean, we're in the phases now where we're trying to plan next year's schedule. We've taken a lot of input from staff in terms of electives that we could potentially offer at Marquette Senior High School, you know, with the sentiment that that's one of the things that we do best, is we offer a lot of opportunities for our students. And so with that in mind, asking our staff to put forth some recommendations for new courses, and we've got some really good ones here. Just for some context too, as you're looking at the graduation requirements, we are increasing that to 26, and the reason for that is that the state, as many of you probably know, has required a personal finance component as part of the graduation requirements, beginning with this freshman class of 2028. And so subsequently we had to roll personal finance into our econ, and our current econ class. We only had to add a couple of state standards in order to do that. So that's kind of the reason for that there. But I'd be happy to answer any questions about the courses or the graduation requirements if you have them.
Are the pre-AP courses new, or is that, what's the change in a pre-AP course versus?
Absolutely, that's a great question, Mr. Zadunik. There's absolutely no change other than that name allows us access to the College Board resources. So that's all that is. We already have a World History 10. It's being called a pre-AP course for the resources reason.
So how many credits was it previously?
25 and a half.
25 and a half. And so it's just that additional financial?
Correct.
Okay, I get it. Thank you.
And forgive me if it might be on here, I just didn't see it. For the personal finance course under economics, that's a senior? That course is taken a senior year, or is there a year that needs to be taken?
Another great question. So if you look at our social studies credits there, you'll see that now it's 3 or 3.5, and that depends on the different route you take through the social studies curriculum. So let's say, for instance, you take pre-AP World, assuming that's adopted this evening, and then you move on to AP US. Then you would take AP Gov, which in and of itself is a single credit course per the College Board. But we're also including a half credit of economics in there because one, personal finance, and also it's a graduation requirement. So we rolled that in to try to be as efficient as we could within that. So effectively, if you take AP Gov and Econ, you're getting 1.5 credits. Does that answer your question, Mr. Zadunik?
Thank you. So it doesn't, there's not a set year that the personal finance course will be taught? Like it has to be taught a particular junior year or senior year? There's no stipulations that determine when that course needs to be taken? There's some latitude with the districts?
There's latitude, obviously. You know, the way that we have it written in there is that the inherent intent is that econ and government are taken in the senior year from the standpoint that that's when it's going to be most relevant to our students on their way out the door into the real world. Having that personal finance component, we felt that was probably most applicable given our current curriculum. Yep, and then we also have it as a standalone course, obviously the personal finance, to be able to ensure that we're meeting the state standards.
Thank you, Mr. Wheeler. Any other questions before we move along? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. So one last item under the superintendent report, under other, I just want to, and this seems to be an appropriate meeting to announce that our own James Lampman recently met the requirements for certification through MSBO to receive his CFO designation certification, which reflects, a high degree of academic professional preparation as set by standards by the MSBO Board of Directors. So not an easy task to accomplish, something I think that's worthy of some praise. So congratulations and well done, Mr. Lampman. We'll have an auditor here later tonight that will give a little bit more information on the year-end budget. We'll see if Mr. Gressing confirms, Mr. Grentz confirms that is in fact the case. So I think he will. So that is all I have for the superintendent report. Thank you.
Thank you. And the next agenda item is approval of the consent agenda, which includes minutes of the board meeting November 18th, minutes of the closed session, assistant superintendent contract, personal report dated from December 2024, and financial personnel report, and the financial reports of November 2024. I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Support.
Motion made by Jane Klipp, and we have Cheryl Maddox Smith is in support. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Next item on the agenda is Student School Board Representatives Report.
Thank you. So here at MSHS, we are nearing the end of the first semester. That is like mid-January. So although most of us are checked out for winter break, there are a few tests this week for all classes that we're still thinking about. We had the winter formal dance on December 7th, and that was really fun. A lot of students had a lot of fun there, and the decorations in the auxiliary gym were really cool, and there's a huge inflatable, so people were having fun at that. And then on the 9th, there was a chorus concert that went really well. There's a great turnout of both parents, students, and the community. And so yeah, that was fun. The snow day was nice. Thank you, Mr. Sedgwick. I think the band concert got rescheduled due to that, and then the orchestra is tonight. And yeah.
For sports, I think all of our winter sports right now are in kind of full roll. I think we offer around like 10 to 11 different sports. You'd have to make sure with Mr. Engels, but I think it's really cool just like the amount of opportunity and involvement we had during the winter for the MSHS students. Well, another thing I'd like to touch on is our esports. Our esports plays a game called Rocket League. I don't know if any of you guys know what that is, but they just won regional finals 2 weeks ago, and they got the opportunity to go down to Michigan State and compete for a state championship. But they lost, but that was really cool. Ms. Lebeck does a great job running that program. And then this week for student council has been like our main focus. We're trying to just make it like a smooth transition into winter break and give the students something to look forward to. So we're doing dress-up days every day this week, and then Friday we have an assembly. There's like, I don't know, we do different like grade competitions, and then Friday night is 3 home games, and it's hockey, girls basketball, and boys basketball. And we're trying to make it like so if you go to all 3 games, there'll be like an incentive. You can offer your name into a drawing and have a chance to win something. So yeah.
So yeah, speaking of that assembly, starting at 11:35 a.m. on Friday, we'd like to invite the board to show up, and if you guys can. And it's fun. It's a lot of school spirit, and everyone's psyched for break, and yeah. And of course, the games, the sports games, if you want to come out to those will be filled with students as well. Thank you.
It's 11:35 on Friday.
Yep.
When are the games?
The hockey game is at 5, and then the girls basketball 6:30, and the boys basketball is to follow.
Thank you for your candor, and hopefully we'll get inflatables at a board meeting if they were that popular. Next item on the agenda is comments from the public. I don't have any yellow sheets, so I don't believe we have any comments from the public tonight. Next item is new business. Got several items to consider. The first is adoption of the amendment to the 2024-2025 budget. I would entertain any motions.
Should we, is our representative from Anderson Tackman here? Should we?
We can do the audit.
He'll be giving a separate
Okay.
discussion under item 13.
Okay.
I would recommend making a motion to adopt the budget at this point.
Gotcha. I'll make a motion that we adopt the 2024-2025 budget amendment.
Support.
All right, we have motion by Mr. Hewitt, support by Ms. Ray. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Next is to consider an increase in the hourly and daily services rate effective 12/16/2024.
Make a motion to consider the increase in the 2024-2025 MAPS hourly and daily service rates effective 12/16/2024.
Support.
And we have a motion by Mr. Zadunek, support by Ms. Ray. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Next item is consider modification to subrates for 2024-2025.
Make a motion to consider the modification to the subrates for 2024-2025.
Support.
All right, we have a motion by Mr. Zadunek, support by Mr. Hewitt. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Next, approve new course offerings at Marquette Senior High School.
I'll make a motion to approve the new course offerings at MSHS Marquette Senior High School.
Support.
We have a motion by Ms. Ray, support by Mr. Hewitt. I should have asked on the previous items if there was any comment. I'll ask for comment on this item. Any comment? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Next is consider nomination of Kristen Cambenzi for Region 1 MASB Board of Directors.
I'll make a motion to consider the nomination of Kristen Cambenzi for Region 1 MASB Board of Directors. Second.
We have a motion from Ms. Ray, second from Ms. Klipp. Any comment? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Next item is consider adoption of a completed year-end evaluation for the superintendent.
Make a motion to adopt the completed year-end evaluation for the superintendent, Mr. Sedgwick.
Second.
Was that Ms. Klipp? All right, we have a hat trick for Mr. Zadunek making the motion, and we have support by Ms. Klipp. Any comment? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
The last item is consider ratification of superintendent contract.
I'll make a motion to consider ratification of superintendent contract. Support.
So we have a motion by Ms. Ray, support by Ms. Klipp, I believe.
Ms. Maddox.
Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Maddox-Smith. Any comment? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Next item on the agenda is the audit report.
Thank you for the mic, Mr. Sedgwick. We have here with us tonight Mike Grentz. He's a partner with Anderson Tackman and Company. His firm audited our 2023-2024 school year, and he's here tonight to present that audit report, and each of you should have a copy of the audit report in your packet. Mr. Grentz, would you mind taking the podium, please?
short and sweet. Starting on page 4 is the opinion. You had an unmodified opinion, so it means complied with all the generally accepted accounting principles.
Excuse me, Mr. Grins, could you do me a favor and press the button on the mic? There you go. Now your mic's live.
Now we can.
Thank
now
you.
we can. So page 4 is the opinion. You have an unmodified opinion, so you complied with all the generally accepted accounting principles. It says they're your statements, not ours, and we take a sampling of transactions. We don't look at every transaction. Looking at page 17, when you roll the district up in total, you ended up with a deficit of just over 9 million. An unrestricted deficit of 31 million. But if you come up the page a little bit, you'll see the net pension liability is 63 million. So once you offset that with your shortfall, you're sitting in a good position. You're in the same boat everybody else is. I've had the same spiel already twice tonight. This is my third. So once you take that into account, you're in the same spot everybody else is. The nice thing to see is your OPEB liability, which is basically retiree health insurance. That's actually a benefit position. So you're actually overfunded in that bucket for the first time, as long as I can remember being in that spot. And that's the same with all schools. If you look at page 18, you actually added $9 million to the bottom line in the current year. If you look at page 20, for those that want to actually delve into more details, I'll just kind of skim through it quick. But it's like the changes in your bond payments. It's a big piece of that is $3 million benefit because your pension and OPEB costs were actually less than what you paid out during the year, which is good to see. The other big thing of it is capital purchases come out of expenses that get capitalized to come up to the top of the page of a $3.8 million gain for the year, which comes back to page 21, which is what you're more used to seeing when you're getting your financial statements. The general fund had a gain of about 2.6 million. All your other funds had a gain of about 1.1 million. Looking at page 66, a big piece of that gain, 1.4 million of it, came from the capital projects fund. So there was a large transfer into that fund. You didn't spend that, you're kind of saving that for projects coming down the road. So kind of looking at it from that perspective, that's what's causing the big gain there. Going back and kind of focusing on the general fund on page 63, you know, you kind of looking at the budget, the first column was your original budget and you're projecting almost a $700,000 shortfall. Your final budget projection was a gain of 1.8 million and you ended up at 2.6 million. So a nice big swing from the beginning of the year to the end. And a big swing of that was grants coming through. And what grants are coming and spending them, you don't always know what those are going to be at the beginning of the year. So at the end of the day, you look really well in that perspective of, I don't see issues, I don't see problems. Some people could look at that and say that, well, that's a big swing in original budget versus final and actual. But in all actuality, with how many grants that are flowing through and all the ESSER money that's coming through, that makes a big difference.
And I would think the board is not a stranger to me saying that we've been trying to hit a moving target the last few years. We had a lot of grants come down the line mid-year that weren't planned or expected at the beginning of the year, which is the case again this year. We earlier this year applied for a safety grant. The state's coming through with some additional safety dollars that are going to have to be spent this year. but there's still a question as to how much we're going to be allocated and what the timeline for those dollars are going to be. So yeah, we try to be conservative on the front end, but we don't, when we adopt the original budget, but we don't always know what's going to happen during the course of the year, and there's been a lot of grant activity that's occurred. So we've been trying to hit that moving target as we go along the year.
Mm-hmm. And you can see, the nice thing is you're making those adjustments during the year. You're accounting for them, so that's what I'd like to see. Your fund balance is sitting in a good spot. The question I always have now is, now that we've kind of gotten through the COVID hurdle, and how is that gonna affect funding? You know, the ESSER funding, you've gotten a lot of ESSER dollars and COVID dollars coming through. Now that those funds are gonna dry up, how is the funding gonna be going forward? Nice thing is, with a lot of those grants, you were able to do things that normally would come out of operating dollars that you're not gonna have to worry about for the next few years. So it's kind of looking at that future budget and how are things gonna look at 1 year, 2 years, 3 years down the road in funding and expenditures from that standpoint. This year when we were doing the single audit, we did have 2 findings. And if we look on page 79, is actually we had one this year. We had one finding, so when we were testing one of the grants, we noticed that there was a payment for another organization that was made by the school. It wasn't a significant dollar amount by any means, but it was $144. So it's one of those things, because it was in the compliance realm, we took our sampling, we have to know, hey, we did find this, we have to extrapolate that out to the population, and once we did that, it comes out to roughly $1,300, that if it was a progressive issue, that's what it would be. Small in comparison, and the amount of invoices coming through, it's easily missed. But we have to obviously report it, and I think just going forward, it's when those pay vouchers are coming through, just double checking and making sure that, hey, I got a stack of them, are they all going to the right spot, are they all for us? Nothing that I'm jumping up and down and saying we have big issues on that at all.
Well, and I guess I will say in response to this, we have added an additional layer of review in our accounts payable invoices. So again, there's no perfect system of internal controls that's going to catch everything, but you know, our goal is to have 0 mistakes and try to minimize those as much as possible. So we have responded in regards to the issue at hand.
Yep. So I think that's as best as you can do. You know, mistakes happen, it is what it is, but other than that, that's the short version. Does anybody have questions? We'd like to go into more detail.
Anyone?
They do have a couple. Sorry.
No, that's great.
No, go ahead.
Do it.
Did you say sorry to me?
I'm sorry, Ms. Beth, I think you're
I'm here, I'm still awake, babe. You do it.
Okay. Page 63, the business services, looks like it went over about 136,000. What types of costs would be wrapped up into that particular category?
Business services, that's gonna be, I'm trying to think of what it would be here off the top of my head. The budget might actually have a better breakout of that.
I don't know that I have that level of detail with me, but I can certainly get that for you, what the breakout of that particular function is.
Okay, yeah, that'd be great if we could get, or if I could see something, or potentially share that with the board of where the variance would be and what might have constituted that particular area.
Yeah, and when the Michigan Department of Education reviews this, they're looking at expenditures in total. They're not looking on a per function line item as presented here. But I can still provide you with that breakdown.
I'd appreciate that, thank you.
No problem.
Second question is in regards to the special education millage. Is that reflected, is that millage reflected in this audit report, or is that something that's going to be coming down the line soon?
So we're already collecting off the special ed millage, and that is reflected in the audit report and the budget amendment that was approved this evening.
Okay. Thank you. And the third and final question I had is on page 60, where it goes over the pension costs, where in 2015 that was approximately under the statutorily required contributions was about 3.3 million, and that went up to 8 million in 2024. Is that a standard increase that you've seen across the districts? Is that unique to us?
No, it is not. This, we could go down a big rabbit hole on this. I'll try to keep it simple. The state comes out with the formula and says, here's what you're going to contribute. And it's pretty much a flat, school-wide, every district sees the same thing. So it's not Marquette has one, Gwynn has their own. It's here's the standard percentage from the state, and then it's what matrix do you have of the population of your employees and teachers? Are they on the defined benefit plan, or are they on the defined contribution plan? And it's all driven based off of that. That's the short, the short answer.
So it's not just us?
It's not just you.
All right, thank you.
And then Mr. Lampman, do you know what the 144.14 was spent on?
I
remember.
I do recall the invoice, yes.
Yes.
Did it have anything to do with nutrition, or was it just
It was in our child nutrition program, and one of our vendors with whom we do a lot of business accidentally included a charge for another one of their clients on one of our invoices. And I can see how it would have been easy to miss in a review. Again, we've added an additional layer of review in place. So hopefully that resolves any issues going forward. My take was it was an isolated event. When we looked at other invoices, we didn't find any similar occurrences with that particular vendor when we started spot checking some others. So we kind of feel like that was just kind of an isolated error that occurred.
could have been an input error or something?
Yeah, and it just was not, and we were credited that amount back, so the district did not eat that cost. The vendor did refund us that amount. So we jumped on it immediately when we learned of it. But again, we've tried to put some changes in place that will minimize the likelihood of this occurring in the future.
And it's one of those invoices from a vendor where you're getting multiple slips daily, and it just,
yeah,
when you're flipping through them all, it was an got allocated to the wrong entity.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
All right, thanks.
All right, the next item on the agenda are gifts and bequests. We've received another donation from the I'm sorry. I would entertain a motion to approve the audit report.
Make a motion to accept the 2023-2024 audit report by Anderson Tackman.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Hewitt, support by Ms. Ray. Any comments? No, hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Now, on to the next agenda item, which is gifts and bequests. We received a donation from the Kauffman Foundation. This is something that they've done for several years now, and again, we're just so fortunate to have the foundation and the family in our community. They've donated $5,000 for Coats for Kids. And I'm sure we'll address thank yous in our board member comments, which is the next agenda item. Some board member comments. And I think we start with, we usually do this, I haven't paid attention past.
She usually starts with Jason and then goes to Cheryl and then.
Who's to do next?
Just thank you, and I know we've talked a little bit about Mr. Hewitt, but just thank you and appreciate everything you've done over the last decade to take your time to help out the schools and your time on the board, and it's outstanding. So thank you very much. Also spent time at the school this weekend with the Marquette Challenge wrestling tournament. Great job by everyone involved to put that tournament on. So just wanted to mention everyone. Thank you to everyone who put that on. So other than that, I hope everybody has a great holiday weekend.
I also want to echo Jason and thank Jim for the last decade. Certainly our district wouldn't be where it is without you, and the community owes you deep respect, and thank you. Congratulations on your free Monday nights. Thank you also to our generous community, the $5,000 for the Coats for Kids. That's just awesome. We live in such a great place. I know the budget meeting probably isn't everybody's favorite meeting, but it really is the nuts and bolts of our district, and it's important. You know, we're here for it and asking the questions, and I just want to thank Mr. Lampman and our auditors and all the great questions from the board. A lot of time goes into it and a lot of work. So thank you, everybody. Have a great holiday.
And Ms. Clip?
Again, just echoing, good luck, goodbye. I always appreciated your very even and logical demeanor. I'm somebody that needs to think things out loud, and I really do value hearing other people's thought processes, because it really does anchor mine. So thank you so much for that, and enjoy time back with your family. Thank you, Mr. Lampman. This is some dense stuff, and I appreciate the amount of work that goes into it. Thinking about our teachers and our kids this last week, may the force be with you. Enjoy the last few days, and especially to administration and teachers. This is a really fun time of the year, but oh my goodness, it's a lot of energy. Kauffman Foundation, where I'm not sure where our community would be without them either. We're so grateful for them. Have a wonderful holiday break, and stay safe, everybody.
That's right.
I'll just follow suit here, but really have appreciated, being on the board with you, Jim. It's your input and your experience, and obviously your passion and your love for our district goes deep in your family, and it goes beyond just having your kids in the district, and that's of great value to our community. Need more people like that. And just personally, your wisdom and your leadership as I came onto the board was of great value, particularly through COVID and change of superintendents and so forth. I appreciated the leadership you and Kristen and Glenn gave to the rest of us. I also really want to say thanks. We take it for granted what our community does, and along with our school systems, to coordinate getting coats for every child is in a place where it's very cold is important, and it shouldn't be a question. It should be a given that every child has a coat to wear. Thanks, you guys. Have fun this coming break. I really appreciate hearing about all that you're doing in the schools, and we'll try to make it up. So, happy holidays to everybody. Thank you.
Yeah, I already had a lot of time to speak earlier, but thanks again to everybody for all the kind words, and just best of luck to the board and our district and our schools and our students and everybody in 2025 and going forward. So thank you.
Thank you. We were going to name a street after you, but that option had already been taken.
Oh, that's very clever. That was clever.
Well, I try. Again, personally, it's been a pleasure working with you. I happen to walk by your office quite a bit, and it's nice to be able to stop in and have a talk every so often. I still will do that, but now I'm just going to kind of vent. So, and you, as a retired board member, you're just going to have to put up with it. But thank you for your contributions and your sacrifices your family had to make. This isn't a high-paying job by any means. There's a lot you have to do in the community while other people are relaxing, and you take questions and reassure people about what the board is doing. And I think very appropriate for you to mention the kind of the successes the board has had the last few years, and certainly your contribution to those successes has been great. So I really appreciate your time. I think on behalf of Kristen Cambenzi, she would like to thank everybody for the nomination. And I'm just glad I didn't miss the meeting, otherwise I might have been nominated. We have some announcements and other meetings. We have December 23rd through January 3rd. These guys are going to be sleeping in at the end of the table. It's winter break and there's no school. Also, Mr. Sedgwick will have to get up early and see how the roads are during those days, I'm sure. He might do it out of habit. January 6th is the organizational meeting, 5:30 at the MSHS library. And then the last item on the agenda is to adjourn the meeting. Anybody willing to make that motion? How about if you make that motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Any support? Okay, Mr. Hewitt has made a motion to adjourn. There's support by Ms. Ray. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?